Duhme is here. It's my huge honor to introduce her to anyone who has not had the pleasure of knowing her. Carol attended John Burroughs School in St. Louis, which is her hometown, and then she was at Vassar College, and she has been the Chautauqua Institution trustee in the past. She's been honored, I think I counted 14 awards since the early 70s, and most interesting to me, an ageless, remarkable St. Louisan, that's a mouthful, and honoring her contributions to society in general. The Eden Theological Society, or Seminary rather, gave her a DHL, the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters. And Carol Duhme is 100 years old.
Right.
Carol, this isn't the first time I've interviewed you. Do you remember that we first met in, I want to say, 1977 or 78? It was big news that you were going to move your house.
We did, that's
yes,
right.
Do you remember that? The poster
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Sent me up and said, go up there and write a story about these people who are moving their house from across the street to the lakeside.
Yes, that's what we did.
What was that all about?
Well, we owned the property. We owned the house across the street. We owned the Lakeview property, and we didn't want to put a house in our own view, sort of. So we thought, what do we do? Do we build a house down there? Or a lot of people said, well, do you ever think of moving your house? We'd never thought of that, but we did talk to 2 different companies that do that kind of thing. And so it was a fascinating experience, I must say.
And it pales in comparison to all the moves going on the ground since that time. I'm thinking that, isn't that the site of one of the most talked about homes on the grounds now?
Yes, it is, that's right, because they tore down my house that I've lived in for many, many years and built a house that would really look better out in California, I think.
Well, it's certainly been the subject of many conversations.
And I was so impressed with there were 5 men in this company that moved the house. How careful they were about each other, because it was a dangerous thing to do, you know. But I was so impressed by the care with which they did it.
Yeah, it was an interesting story for me to write about. So you've seen many changes on the grounds of Chautauqua Institution. I'm thinking in particular of one that I think relates to your family. For many, many years behind the amphitheater there was a red footbridge. And was that related to one of your kids, the footbridge behind the amphitheater?
Footbridge?
Yes, you know, that you walked across behind the amp? Or am I mixing that up?
No, I guess not.
That's not yours.
But Dick did the sculpture, which is behind the amp, behind the library.
Oh, that's right. Okay, the little boy playing the pipe.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's true.
And tell us how you first got to Chautauqua.
Well, I got to Chautauqua, I was in the 7th grade, and I visited my grandmother. My sister and I visited our grandmother, and while we were here, we took typing. We learned to type.
I also took typing at Chautauqua.
Oh, good. But we only stayed 2 weeks, so we left before we got to the top row of the typewriter. So I've never learned the typewriter to really do it right on the top row.
But you came here with your husband when he was named the head of the sculpture department?
Well, he came with me to visit my mother and father. Yeah, so that. And Ralph McAllister, who was chairman of education or something, then said, why don't you come and teach for us?
Oh.
And so Dick was then teaching for the time of the GI Bill of Rights in St. Louis in summertime. So he couldn't come then. The next summer when Ralph said, why don't you come teach for us? Dick said, well, okay, I will. And so for at least 35 years, he taught here in the summertime and in St. Louis in the wintertime. So
I remember your husband, and I think what a distinguished honor for him that he designed the presidential medal.
Yeah, and he did. That's right.
That Chautauqua gives to someone every summer.
Yeah, they do. That's right.
Or maybe not every summer, but
often they do.
Often they do.
Yes, that's true.
It's a big honor. I wanted to ask you also, because you've pioneered for sure in many respects. On your resume, it lists the first woman to be a trustee of the United Church of Christ. Is that nationally, or where was that?
Well, I was the first woman trustee of my own church, it was.
Oh, okay.
But I was, I guess, I was the moderator of the St. Louis Association of the United Church of Christ. Well, I was just active in my church, that's all. I taught Sunday school for years, and before I got through, I'd, done all the other jobs that there are.
And you must be excited every year when Chautauqua has a YWCA Day, because you've talked often of your affinity and your mother's affinity with that organization.
That's right. Yes, my mother was the vice president of the World's YWCA, and when I got out of college, they asked me to be the sponsor of a business girls club. And these were girls who lived not in the, you wouldn't say in the inner city, but they still were limited girls, limited in their background. So our purpose was to try to sort of broaden their vision of life. They just thought they had a little job until they got married or something. So we would try to get them interested in other things, and so that was fun.
Your college major, everybody who interviews you asks you about this, and I can't be the exception. It's fascinating to me, I suppose, because in the world we live in, it seems as though we should all know about this major, and we should probably have many more people majoring in this. So why don't you share it with us?
Yes. Well, it was called euthenics, not eugenics, but euthenics. Which, when you look that up, what that says in the dictionary, it says the science of the betterment of living. And I really thought, for me, what a perfect major this was. In other words, it was a cross-departmental major. We took economics, we took child study, we took, all different subjects, sort of. I mean, which was a wonderful background, I think, for.
Are you aware? Is it in other college?
No, I don't think they went on and did it, because it's not a specific. It might be because it's not specific in any one field, but of course that's also the value of it, I think, for a volunteer.
Or for a liberal arts education.
Exactly. Yeah, for a liberal arts education, that's true. So, I was been a volunteer all my life, except when I first got out of college, I taught elementary school for 5 years, which was fun. I loved that. Yeah.
And I believe you see a connection to another of your passions, social work.
Oh, that's right, yes.
That euthenics sort of leads into that in many respects.
I think it does. I know. I'm on the National Council of the School of Social Work at Washington University. And that's an interesting thing. The faculty will come with the things they're working on and what they're thinking they're going to do, or new ideas, and they theoretically were asking us what we thought, but I'm not sure how important our opinions were, but it was fascinating. I thought I still am on the National Council.
And you were instrumental in helping them tie together, am I getting this right, the divinity side of things with this?
Yeah, for me, this is one of the most exciting things that I've been involved in my life, really. I was sitting down at dinner one time next to this professor of the School of Social Work, and I said, I just think it'd be great if a School of Social Work and Eden Theological Seminary could get together, because, and he said, well, there are a number of us who think so too. And so by organizing a group of people behind that, we made it possible. In other words, think of the details. In other words, each place had different hours, they had different fees, everything was different. So it took somebody to be able to spend the time, really, to work out all those details. So, in other words, I thought the social workers needed to realize that faith is also a healing thing, and you go to Eden, which is a liberal Protestant denomination. I think that's important about it, and that it really needed to know some of the skills of the social workers. So now you can go to St. Louis, I guess you'd say, and get a dual degree. You get a master's in social work. At the same time, you get a master's in divinity. So you have both when you graduate. So
it's interesting to hear about this category of education these days, because it seems like more and more. I read the other day that 9 out of 10 of the top jobs that are out there now have engineering in the job title. You don't hear about social work as much as you did.
Well, also there's such an emphasis on math and science, and of course
STEM.
math and science are important. But I think the other side too is, I mean, getting along with people and your attitude toward life, and the STEM, that's what they call the math and science and all that emphasis,
Sure.
isn't it?
So living as long as you have, you've had a lot of joys and sorrows.
Oh, yes,
and,
that's right.
You survived 2 husbands and 2 sons. And
I know,
how have you been able to cope with these kinds of
Well, I really do
downturns?
think in the background for me it really is my faith, and then I'm an optimist, and I've always had a positive attitude. I have the feeling everybody has choice. Some people can really be tempted by and choose the negative thing. They don't realize they're doing that. Or you can just choose the more positive things going on. Like right now, I think in the world, we certainly have problems in the United States right now, I agree. But there are lots of good things going on too. And it's not as exciting for the press to talk about the really good things. It's more exciting when something terrible happens. Everybody's curious to know what happened. So that is what the news is all about.
How do you find purpose in your life? When you wake up in the morning, I heard you say that you cook for yourself, and I believe you just renewed your driver's license.
Oh,
and, what is it? Your faith that?
I would say that. Yeah, I would say that's the beginning, motivating factor, I should say. And I've always had very good support from my mother and father. So yes. So yeah, you're right. I had some rough experiences too. My first husband was a flyer in the Second World War, and he was lost at sea in the South Pacific. And I had David, my oldest son, was his son, who is now a doctor in Maine. He's just moved to Maine. And then I got married again, which was to Dick, who was the sculptor. So I feel very fortunate, really, to have had 2 wonderful, really, marriages and four children, and 3 of my daughter and 2 grandchildren are social workers. Isn't that amazing?
That is. That is.
I wasn't really a social worker, but I just believed in the idea, because social work to me looks at the whole situation. That's different. To compare it to medicine, you have your primary care physician who looks at the whole person, then you have your specialist, and sometimes the specialist is so special that he would miss something else that's the matter with you. So I think social work's that way. I mean, it looks for a person, their housing and their economic situation and their health and their psychological background, and then it knows which areas that they need help with. That's sort of the idea, I think.
A holistic approach.
Exactly. That's I think social work is. And then when you look at the world, what should be the direction of social work? In other words, it tries to influence areas in the direction they should go.
You've added much through the years, besides being a trustee of the institution back in the 70s. I know that you headed up, I believe, the Bell Tower Scholars.
Yes.
I've forgotten, even though I'm fairly close to these things, I've really forgotten what that's about.
Yes, well, it would be, what we did was we brought 2 young teachers from England to Chautauqua for 6 weeks of study. And I always thought of that as an enrichment program. I'd always say to them, don't take something that's really in your field, but do something that you have always thought would be fun to do, but you really couldn't do that back home because you had to be concentrating on your profession and everything. Like one of the things they did was they loved to take gliding. They took gliding lessons.
Over in Hartfield, probably.
They did, that's right. But and it was... we didn't tell them what they had to do. In other words, it was what they were interested in doing at Chautauqua. And it was fun, they would come and sort of think, what is this Chautauqua? They really weren't sure what they were getting.
They and everybody else,
yeah,
right?
That's right, exactly. And to see after about 2 or 3 days, they'd get so caught by it, all the music and all the wonderful things that go on at Chautauqua, and they'd be so excited. But so we did that for many, many years, and it's really right now because of, oh dear, what's it called? Brexit, where England's pulled out
Oh, yes,
of it.
yeah.
Well, the English-speaking union apparently had a meeting and decided they were not going to assist in any foreign scholarships. So a lot of my alumni, you might say, are working on saying you can't do that because this was a good program, and
They saw the value of it.
And what they did was they actually advertised the program, and they interviewed and chose the scholars. So what we did, of course, was pay for their being here at Chautauqua and also to make contacts for them when
Was
they
that
came.
part of the Robley Foundation?
It has been both that and not that, too. Really, I had a group of Chautauquans who were very nice and liked this program and supported it. And once a year we had a luncheon, and it would be a nice luncheon, and whoever the students were would be the entertainment, and they did different things. Like one year, there were two girls, and they described Chautauqua by spelling out C-H-A-U, you know, the whole thing, and activities in relation to each one of those things.
Great.
But one time somebody told us too much about jonquils. The group. No. But anyway, so we I mean, the programs were always different. One time, one young man who was a beautiful violinist, in 1 week he got together a quartet, and they played for us at the
The
luncheon.
spontaneity on the grounds is remarkable, isn't it?
Wonderful,
Yes,
that's
it
right.
is.
Well, so we had it with these young teachers. I mean, they were old enough. They were always in their late 20s or early 30s, so they knew they wanted to be teachers. And only once did we ever have a problem with discipline or anything. But they were young enough that they were eager to see all the new things. I mean, they were just open to new ideas, which was fun.
You have quite the location as you're coming to Chautauqua these days, because you overlook, I don't know where you are in the San Elmo, but being right over Vester Plaza, that's where you see more spontaneity than ever
that's
out there.
True in a way. Yeah, that's right.
The kids playing ball.
Yeah, I moved there, I guess, about, I don't know, a few years ago. And of course, it's very convenient living right in the middle of Chautauqua. I do miss my lake view, though, on my house. I was right on the lake, and it was fun to see the storms, you know, come down, sometimes the other side of the lake, and sometimes our side of the lake, and so I miss that part.
You look very healthy. I see you taking care of, you wear a hat a lot when I see you walking around in the sun and
Yeah, that's right.
watching your skincare, I suppose. Do you have any other advice for those of us who might want to come behind you and make it to 100?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I can remember I used to just, I guess you do when you're young, you know, you run around and think you'll never fall down, you know, and nothing will happen. But I must confess that now I'm consciously more careful not to fall down. Falling down, I realize, is, as I observe other people who are not so young, that's a fatal thing. It really is. It's not just falling down, but it's what it does to you, you know.
One of your quotes that I can't get out of my mind is how you said just a little bit of extra time when a person needs it can be so important. Is that sort of a premise of social work, or that comes out of just your attitude with your relationship with God, or?
I guess all those things.
All those things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, but that's true. Yeah, that's right.
What are your favorite things to do on the grounds?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the symphonies, and I think we're very, very lucky to have, what's his name now? I wrote it down because I always forget, Milanov. In fact, the night that he played all Russian music, he did that one night, and you could just see how enthusiastic he was about it, because his background is Russian. But of course, he's been very innovative too, which I think is very interesting. The symphony accompanies the ballet dancers, and think how exciting it is for a ballet dancer to have the symphony, your music, you know. And they've done what do you call it? Musical theater, yeah. I mean, popular music, you know, and one evening the symphony was Cuban music, and that was quite. I wonder how I'd like that, but I liked it. It was very nice.
So I'm taking this as an endorsement of the new amphitheater.
Oh yes, I know. I think it's great. You know, two ladies came early in the summer, came up, were talking to each other, and they said, "Well, I thought they were going to do something to the amphitheater." So I mean, they've been very clever. To really, it doesn't look very different until you get right up to it and look down in. And it's wonderful that they fixed up all the rooms behind the stage where for the visiting artists. Yeah.
Air conditioning.
Oh, I know, and it was very primitive, I think. So, yeah. So, but and also Jared, who plays the organ, he said he has never played anywhere where the acoustics were so good as they are in the new amphitheater. That's marvelous, isn't it? Because I think even people who are authorities on acoustics, they can miss, you know, they really don't exactly know how it works. But anyway, the new amphitheater is wonderful that way too. So I haven't heard anything except positive things about it, which is wonderful, I think. Mm-hmm.
And you spent many years with the old one, so you'd
that's right.
you'd be in a position to pass judgment.
No, well, on a Sunday morning to hear all those people sing hymns is really exciting, you know, and the acoustics make it even more exciting, I think. Yeah, that's right.
So your season is over for 2017?
Yes, how about that? I know. I try hard to get here at least 2 or 3 days ahead of the season to get a little bit settled, because once the season starts, the next thing you know, it's over. It goes so fast, in other words. Because I mentioned the symphony, but the morning lectures have been so good, and every year there's such wonderful variety. When you think this year there was a week on fear, and then a week on the changing ideas of people and their attitude toward food. I mean, so the one I almost liked the best a few years ago was when they had an actual copy of the little rover that had landed on Mars. And that little rover was right here, the copy right here at Chautauqua. To me, that was terribly exciting to think how they ever could do that. I know. So I like it when we have programs like that too. But so there is, every year there's a different collection of programs, and they're always very, very, very interesting.
Do you have a lot of, I know I've read that you feel that you've outlived some of your favorite people, but do you have people come and visit you while you're here, or do you? Well,
I do now have, I have a son and a daughter and 4 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren now. And most of them, we celebrated my birthday in April, and they all came, and I think they all thought, my goodness, she's 100, so we better go see her. So practically all of them came this summer, I must say. It was nice of them to come, but it was fun. So they go from, my youngest will be 1 year old on Halloween.
That's a great-grandchild?
That's a great-grandchild, and my oldest great-grandchild is 11, so that's and they're all little boys. So but I like children, so it's so I enjoyed having that. In my closet, I have toys for different ages, you know.
And you don't go south in the winter?
Well, we used to go down to Fort Lauderdale, but now we don't. Well, I just don't go by myself so much. Because when we first went, we would go mainly because with 4 children, when they got to be teenagers, you know, Christmas vacation, we all were going in different directions. And I thought, well, this will never do. We've got to celebrate Christmas sometime together. So the best way to do it is to go away. So we did. So for 9 years, we went to Florida for Christmas, which was nice. Mm-hmm.
So what are your hopes for next season? Are you going to arrive a little bit early and get settled?
That's what I'm going to try to do. That's right, yeah.
And do you have the same stimulation in St. Louis that you feel when you're at Chautauqua, or do you sort of...
Oh, yes. Oh, well, yes. Oh, yeah. We have a very good symphony in St. Louis, and we have operas. I haven't commented on how good the opera is here too. I mean, they're not. I can remember when I used to come. Remember, there were 6 operas or something.
At Norton, and everybody dressed.
I know, and that was fun. I thought it was fun. But so now they don't have so many. But I thought that what was the name of it? Don Pasquale by Donizetti was wonderful that they did this year. That really was what was it was just excellent. And then, of course, the theater that did Romeo and Juliet, and I like that. So, I mean, I always say to people, there's something for everybody at Chautauqua. You can come and sail and swim and play golf, or you can come and get all involved in the religion lectures, or you could just come and go to the morning ones, or you could come and go to summer school. So that I have a friend, one of my former bell tower scholars, who now comes here every summer, Philip Barnes, and he's a classicist, and he teaches here a course in the summertime, and his wife teaches math, so they both come now come and bring their 2 little boys, which is nice.
Which is the way it works.
That's the way it works.
Moves on from generation to generation.
It really does. People come for 1 week and then 2 weeks, and then they say, "Oh, come every summer of their life."
So it's just a delight to talk to someone who's made it to this milestone of being a centenarian, and sharp as a tack, and I think, again, to go back to what I've heard you say, it's attitude in so many respects.
Well, I think a lot of it's attitude, I know, and you come to terms with don't let things get, I mean, I talk to myself sometimes. I'll say, now don't feel lonesome today, you know, or something like that. I mean, you know, be in control of yourself is very important, and some people have a hard time doing that, I think. So I feel I've had a very interesting and happy life. Yeah.
It's good to recognize that people struggle in that way. I think you're right. You have to be your own coach in many respects.
That's right.
For all
you
of
probably
us.
do that too.
I do that too.
Yes.
I do that too.
And that's important too. Stay on top of it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is important, because I'm a great believer that there really is a lot of good in the world, and try to be a part of the good in a small way. If you can be a part of the good, that gives you a great feeling of satisfaction too.
So you'll get on an airplane in a day or so, and
yes, on Wednesday, and we have to go through Philadelphia. And I understand that this storm from Texas is now moving up the coast. So I wonder where it's going. Oh, that's tragic, isn't it? It really is. Terrible.
We're rather spared here in Chautauqua County from those types of natural disasters overall.
That's wonderful, isn't it? I know it. That's right. You've only had about 1 tornado, I think.
Right. The tornado came that time, but and we had a little hurricane at one point. I remember docks were lost, but for the most part, we're a pretty safe haven from a lot of.
And of course, what's wonderful, it always cools off at night practically, so it's a great place to come in the summertime.
For those of you from St. Louis, you are in heat when you're there, right? In the summer?
Once this summer, one Saturday afternoon, it was 107 in St. Louis, and humid. That is just, you know, unbearable practically. That's right.
Well, we're glad you're here, and I thank you very much for giving me some time with
Well, it's always a joy to talk to you and to see you, because I've known you since you were a little girl.
That's right.
Which is wonderful. Yeah, that's right.
I love thinking about a humanitarian that I know and appreciate very much.
Well, I have enjoyed and loved Chautauqua, and think it's a great value for anybody who comes.
Thank you also for joining us.
Thank you.